This time I'd like to invite Congressman Dennis Kucinich, a member of the Congressional Caucus on India and Indian Americans, to make some welcoming remarks. Really appreciate the Congressman taking time out of his very demanding schedule to join us this evening. Congressman Kucinich.
Thank you very much. I was ready to proudly yield to my good friend John Lewis, who is a civil rights champion and someone who I deeply admire, to the honored ambassadors who are here, and to members of the American Jewish Committee and the AAPI, and all those who have created this moment. I had the opportunity a few years ago to address the Jain Convention and to share my own understandings and what I have learned from the Hindu culture, and specifically from the Jains and the Jaina, the practice. And like Gandhi and Dr. King and others, having studied the Jain's practice, led me to an understanding of the sanctity of all life, of all species, that even an ant has within it the eminent power of existence, which must be respected. And that if you can extend that respect to all species at every level, you come to an understanding how precious life is at all levels. And you come to an understanding of the importance of nonviolence, that peace is not simply the absence of war, that it is an active capacity for the kind of mutuality that has just been spoken about. It is an understanding that the essential truth of our existence is human unity, that we are all one, that we are all interconnected and interdependent, and that acting from that understanding, we begin the daily work, painstaking work, of trying to be not simply our brother and sister's keeper, but to find the way in which we are actually our brother and sister, because we are all one. So the Hindu principles of Yanam, Tapasya, and Shakti are all relevant here, because we are the energy of the stars, and the energy of the stars are one within us. And when we accept that unity of all existence, we then come to an understanding that we have the power to create the world in the way that we want it. So let us create peace. Thank you very much.
In 1896, the Supreme Court handed down now an infamous decision, Plessy versus Ferguson. That decision ruled that separate facilities and accommodations for black and white Americans was constitutional. And for nearly half a century, that case stood until it was overturned by Brown versus the Board of Education. That decision ushered in an era of bigotry, racism, and discrimination. Less than a decade after that decision was made, in 1906, the American Jewish Committee was formed. 3 years later, in 1909, the NAACP was formed. In 1917, the U.S. Congress passed a law preventing immigrants from Asia from becoming American citizens. One of the first persons to challenge that law in court was an immigrant from India, Bhagat Singh Thind, who immigrated from Punjab, joined the U.S. Army, and applied for U.S. citizenship. His case went up to the Supreme Court in 1923, and the court, like the Plessy Court, which ruled against African Americans, ruled against him and denied him American citizenship. That case stood on the books for more than 3 decades until another immigrant from India, Dalip Singh Sand, challenged it, changed the law, enabling Indian Americans to become American citizens. He was elected as the first Indian American and Asian American ever in the history of our nation to be a member of Congress in 1954. In 1959, Dr. Martin Luther King and his wife, Coretta Scott King, went to India, and it's today now we're marking the 50th anniversary of that historic trip, recognizing the influence Mahatma Gandhi had on Dr. King, but at the same time we recognize the trials and tribulations and the sacrifices made by members of the NAACP and the AJC have led to the freedoms that we have today. So it's a great honor for us to partner together with these community organizations to recognize this historic trip by Dr. King. It's a great honor for me to introduce Ambassador Mira Shankar, India's ambassador to the United States. She previously served as India's ambassador to Germany, but 20 years ago, she was here as the Minister of Commerce at the time when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was India's finance minister, and he initiated a very visionary leadership to open India's economy to the world in 1991. And during that period, Ambassador Shankar was the Minister of Commerce at the forefront of that economic awakening. In the last 10 years, we've seen a dramatic change in U.S.-India relations. You've seen economic growth averaging 9 to 10% every year. And what's more remarkable is the fact that Indian students now make up the largest pool of international students in the U.S., representing $3 billion of investment. And Indian companies are now investing in the U.S. and have created or saved more than 30,000 jobs with more than $5 billion of investment. So her career has come full circle when she served as Minister of Commerce at the awakening of India's reforms, and now 20 years later, she is now returned as India's ambassador to the United States. So please join me in welcoming Ambassador Mira Shankar.
Congressman John Lewis, Ambassador Vilili Nalpo, Dr. Stanley Bergman, and friends. I am truly honored to join you in commemorating the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King's visit to India in February-March 1959 to learn about Gandhiji and India's non-violent freedom struggle. In meetings with President Rajendra Prasad, Vice President Radhakrishnan, and Prime Minister Nehru, in their engagement with Gandhiji's compatriots such as Acharya Vinoba Bhave, in addresses to large public gatherings throughout India, and in Coretta King's spiritual songs, the Kings left a deep impression on and won the affection of the Indian people during their nearly month-long visit that took them to the four corners of India. That historic visit and the 50th anniversary journey that Congressman Lewis led in February this year remind us of the values and ideals that bind our two great democracies, as also our struggles and our triumphs. Mahatma Gandhi not only sought to free a nation from colonialism, but also to liberate a people from prejudices, discrimination, and exclusion. Just as independent India drew upon the American constitutional experience to frame its own constitution, Mahatma Gandhi was inspired by American thinkers such as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thoreau. Mahatma Gandhi, in turn, inspired Dr. Martin Luther King. So this very vigorous flow of ideas between India and America helped to shape, in many ways, the concepts that became such a valuable heritage for people both in India and in the United States. On the occasion, of course, I must also mention that South Africa had a very important role in this process, because it was in South Africa that Mahatma Gandhi actually developed political consciousness. Before that, his was a very conventional life. He studied to be a lawyer. He wanted to be successful, just as any young man out to make his way in the world. But it was in South Africa where he experienced the full discrimination of the apartheid regime that his conscience was stirred, And he evolved the whole concept of nonviolent resistance, not as a passive tool, but as a policy which could give voice to the voiceless and, as he said, change the mind of the oppressor. And that is why he felt that this was something which was far more valuable than violence. On the occasion of Mahatma Gandhi's 140th birth anniversary last week, President Obama recalled that his teachings and ideals, shared with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on this 1959 pilgrimage to India, transformed American society through the civil rights movement. And in South Africa, Nelson Mandela, a living embodiment of these principles, not only overcame apartheid, but also sought to heal and reconcile a divided society. The struggle for civil rights, social justice, human dignity, equality, and interfaith harmony has not ended, and the need for peaceful means to address differences and transform societies remains as urgent as ever. As we see different ideas and forces compete, we have to work as nations, governments, organizations, and individuals to ensure that the ideas and the methods of Gandhi, King, and Mandela prevail and endure. And Congressman Lewis, your journey to India earlier this year to retrace the steps of Martin Luther King Jr. was a very solemn step to remind us of that calling. And your proposal in the US Congress to set up a Gandhi-King scholarly exchange initiative focusing on peace and nonviolence in global conflict resolution is a very important initiative, which we hope will enjoy the support of your congressional colleagues. Congressman Lewis, you are one of the tallest leaders of the American civil rights movement and one of the most admired members of the Congress. On your visit to India, I know you won the hearts of the people of India with the message of your life and your thoughts. In honoring you today and bringing us all together, the American Jewish Committee, the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, the Association of American Physicians of Indian Origin, and the US Asian Organization have not only paid tribute to you and what you eloquently described as a fulfilling and inspiring journey earlier this year, but they have also lent their support to the larger cause that you value so much. Let me add in the end that India and the United States, as the world's two largest democracies, with abiding commitment to individual rights, social justice, and pluralism, and as two nations that have sought to transform their own societies through the power of peaceful means and democratic change, must work together to seek a world that mirrors our own values and ideals. This is the vision of our two leaders, Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and President Obama, and this is a responsibility that we must dedicate ourselves to today. In the end, I would like to end with a Sanskrit saying, which in a sense encompasses the Hindu ethos and their outlook, and that is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which means the whole world is a family. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Congressman John Lewis, who really needs no introduction, the great civil rights leader. He does have a very demanding schedule, so he has to leave for another event. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Lewis.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Madam Ambassador, Mr. Ambassador, and to all the organizations, individuals, and groups that are sponsoring this gathering. I must tell you that I'm delighted, very happy, and very pleased to be here with so many good friends, friends from so many wonderful groups. I did travel to India, and my life would never, ever be the same. I want to go back, and I want to go back very soon. Some of you heard me say earlier today that I grew up very poor in rural Alabama, in the southern parts of the United States of America. And as a child, I saw those signs that said white men, white women, white waiting, colored waiting. As a young child, I tasted the bitter fruits of segregation and racial discrimination. I heard of Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on the old radio, and I was deeply inspired. And as a young student in 1957 and 1958, I met Rosa Parks in 1957 and Dr. King in 1958. I started studying the philosophy of nonviolence, studying what Gandhi was all about in South Africa, what he accomplished in India. We studied the great religions of the world. Gandhi, along with Martin Luther King Jr., taught us we must find a way to get in the way. That with our ideas, with a philosophy, with techniques and tactics, with a way of life, we could change things. I remember getting arrested the first time. I knew that Gandhi had been arrested. I knew that Martin Luther King Jr. had been arrested. But I read someplace where Gandhi has said, it is nonviolence or non-existence. And Dr. King has said, we must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will perish as fools. Madam Ambassador, you're right. Gandhi said it, Dr. King said it in so many words, that we're one people, we're one family, we're one house. Call it the house of South Africa. Call it the house of India. Call it the American house. Call it the world house. We're one house. We're one family. We're one people. And that we must continue to work and build together to create that sense of one family, that sense of one people. We must continue to do what Dr. King and Gandhi preach. Redeem the souls, redeem the soul of our land. And we can do it. And we must come to that point where we make that decision, those of us that follow in the path of Gandhi, in the path of Mandela, in the path of Martin Luther King Jr., that we must never ever give up. We must never ever give in. That we must keep the faith and keep our eyes on the prize. Some of you heard me say earlier this morning, and I truly believe this. I said it in India when we traveled all over the place. And we would go through an airport or come out of a hotel or go to some meeting, and the young people, they recognize us. They say, I saw you on television. They're very much aware of what is going on in our land. But I truly believe, as I said this morning, without Gandhi in India, there would be no Barack Obama as President of the United States of America. Someone said it earlier, there is a thread There is a strain. There is what I call the spirit of history. And every now and then, in the history of humankind, that spirit track down some embodiment of change, some force. I believe that. I think it was the Englishman Honor Toynbee who has suggested that it may be then, he said, the American Negro who would take the message of Gandhi to the Western world. Martin Luther King Jr. became the embodiment, and we followed him. We were arrested. I got arrested 40 times, jailed and beaten and left bloody and unconscious. We said, if Gandhi can do it, if Martin Luther King Jr. can do it, and be nonviolent, be peaceful, we can do it to change America. And we change America, and in doing so, along with Gandhi and Mandela, we have changed the world. We live in a better world, in a better place. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Ambassador Shankar, Dr. Rao, and Stanley Bergman to help present a joint award to the Congressman. And Ambassador Schlappo as well, please. This award is presented to United States Congressman John Lewis on behalf of our organizations, jointly presented for courage, leadership, and service to community.